My name is Samuel, 32 years old, and until recently, I was a successful software engineer with more money than I knew what to do with. So I did what seemed right at the time, supported my estranged father and half-sister Isabella financially for 7 years. When my parents divorced, Dad remarried quickly, starting a new family that never quite felt like mine. Still, I paid their mortgage and Isabella's college tuition, thinking it meant family. Then came that Thursday morning, a text from Dad. "You're out. We don't need you. Isabella." Finally. My reply? "Good timing, I just canceled your payments." Before I dive into what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. This one's going to be quite the ride. To understand how I ended up financially supporting the people who would eventually cast me aside, we need to go back to the beginning. I was born in Seattle to what seemed like the perfect American family. My early childhood memories are filled with weekend trips to the coast, camping in the mountains, and my dad teaching me how to throw a baseball in our backyard. Mom would make her famous apple pie while Dad would tell stories about his adventures as a young man. Those first 10 years of my life seemed idyllic, at least through the rose-colored glasses of childhood. Everything changed when I was 10. The fighting started small, hushed arguments after I went to bed that gradually became louder, more frequent, and impossible to ignore. I remember sitting at the top of the stairs, listening to Mom accuse Dad of cheating, and Dad denying it less convincingly each time. Then came the bombshell. Dad was not only cheating but had gotten his girlfriend Diane pregnant. The divorce proceedings were ugly. Mom fought for full custody, and given the circumstances, she won. Dad moved out, and within 6 months, he and Diane were married. 3 months after that, my half-sister Isabella was born. The first few years after the divorce, Dad made efforts to stay involved in my life. Every other weekend, I'd pack my small duffel bag and stay at his new house across town, but it was never comfortable. Diane would give me these tight-lipped smiles that never reached her eyes. The house was decorated with photos of Dad, Diane, and baby Isabella, with not a single picture of me or any acknowledgement of Dad's life before them. As Isabella grew, it became clear that she was the center of their universe. Dad would cancel our plans if she had a minor cold or a dance recital. Our relationship grew increasingly distant. By the time I was 15, my weekend visits had dwindled to once a month, then special occasions only, and finally, just an awkward annual birthday dinner. That same year, I discovered programming. A teacher at school, Mr. Wilson, noticed I had an aptitude for logic and problem-solving. He stayed after school to teach me the basics of coding. For the first time, I found something that made perfect sense to me when nothing else in my life did. I spent hours in the school computer lab, teaching myself various programming languages. While other kids were playing sports or going to parties, I was building simple games and applications. When I graduated high school, I received a partial scholarship to study computer science at the University of Washington. It wasn't enough to cover all my expenses, so I worked part-time at a tech support center while taking a full course load. Mom helped where she could, but she was struggling financially herself after the divorce. Dad contributed the minimum child support required by the court until I turned 18, then stopped completely. He didn't offer to help with college expenses, explaining that he was saving for Isabella's future. During my junior year of college, I developed an algorithm for optimizing database queries that caught the attention of a professor with connections in the industry. By graduation, I had job offers from 3 major tech companies. I accepted a position as a junior software engineer at Next Gen Technologies, starting at a salary that seemed astronomical to me at the time. The next few years were a blur of hard work, promotions, and increasing financial stability. I lived frugally, paid off my student loans, and started building savings. By 25, I was a senior engineer with stock options and a comfortable condo in a nice part of Seattle. It was around this time that Dad reached out unexpectedly. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since I'd sent a Christmas card that received no response. His voice on the phone sounded strained as he explained that he was in a temporary financial bind. The housing market crash had affected his real estate business, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Could I possibly help them out, just until things turned around? Something inside me leapt at the opportunity. Here was my chance to be needed by the father who had all but forgotten me. I paid their 3 months of back mortgage and the next 3 months in advance. Dad was effusively grateful, promising to pay me back as soon as business picked up. That was the beginning of what would become a 7-year financial relationship. The mortgage help became regular. Then Isabella was accepted to Columbia University, and Dad called again, explaining how the tuition was more than they'd anticipated. Could I help with that too? I agreed, feeling a strange mix of pride and validation. My little sister would get a top-tier education because of me. Maybe this would finally make me feel like a real part of their family. Every month, I transferred $2,000 for the mortgage and $4,500 for Isabella's tuition and expenses. It was a significant amount, but with my salary and bonuses, I could afford it. More than that, it gave me a purpose and connection to the family that had slipped away from me years before. Dad would call to thank me after each transfer. Isabella sent me text messages with photos of campus life. We started having monthly family dinners. For the first time since I was a child, I felt included. When people asked about my family, I could finally talk about my dad and sister with recent stories and a sense of connection. The money seemed a small price to pay for that feeling of belonging. The first sign that things weren't quite right came about 3 years into our arrangement. I had been invited to a family dinner to celebrate Dad's birthday. When I arrived, I noticed several cars I didn't recognize parked outside. Inside, a full family gathering was underway. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends I remembered from childhood. The strange thing was, I hadn't been told it was a party. Dad had simply said, "Come over for dinner on Saturday." When I walked in, there was an awkward pause in the conversation. Aunt Patricia looked surprised to see me. "Samuel, we didn't know you were coming." I smiled through my confusion, explaining that Dad had invited me for dinner. Diane quickly interjected, saying they'd meant to tell everyone I might drop by. The explanation felt hollow, but I pushed the feeling aside and tried to enjoy the evening. Later that night, I overheard 2 of Dad's cousins talking in the kitchen. "It's nice that Richard invited his son from his first marriage," one said. Diane probably wasn't happy about it. The other replied, "Well, from what I hear, Samuel's doing very well for himself. They probably want to stay on his good side." I quietly stepped away, their words settling uncomfortably in my stomach. Around the same time, Isabella's communication patterns changed. When she first started college, she would send me regular updates and occasionally call to chat. Now in her junior year, her messages became less frequent and more transactional, mostly thank you texts after the monthly transfers. When I tried to initiate conversations, her replies were delayed and brief. One weekend, I flew to New York for a tech conference and suggested meeting Isabella for dinner. She responded that she was swamped with midterms and maybe next time. Out of curiosity, I checked her Instagram that evening and saw she had posted photos of herself at a rooftop party in Manhattan, time-stamped during our proposed dinner. During our next family dinner, Dad mentioned they were struggling with some unexpected expenses and wondered if I might be able to increase my monthly contribution. When I asked for details, the explanation was vague, something about property taxes and insurance premiums rising. I hesitantly agreed to add another $1,000 monthly, bringing my total support to $7,500 per month. That winter, I was scrolling through Facebook when I came across photos that made me pause. Dad, Diane, and Isabella were posing on a ski slope in Aspen, all equipped with what looked like brand new gear. Isabella was wearing a designer ski jacket I recognized from an ad. It retailed for over $2,000. Dad had a new set of high-end skis that cost at least as much. The trip had not been mentioned to me, before or after. I started paying more attention to their social media and noticed a pattern. While claiming financial hardship to me, they were living quite luxuriously. Diane frequently posted about shopping trips and spa days. Isabella's Instagram showed expensive restaurants, weekend getaways with friends, and a collection of designer bags. Dad had joined an exclusive golf club with a 5-figure annual membership fee. At our next dinner, I carefully brought up the topic of financial planning. I suggested that perhaps we should discuss a timeline for them to become self-sufficient again. Dad became immediately defensive, reminding me of all the sacrifices he'd made when I was growing up. Diane jumped in, listing all the current expenses they had, from Isabella's education to their healthcare costs. The conversation ended with them making me feel selfish for even suggesting a change to our arrangement. A few weeks later, I realized I hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving dinner. When I called Dad to ask about plans, he seemed caught off guard. "Oh, we're keeping it small this year, just immediate family," he said. The words stung. Apparently, I wasn't considered immediate family. Later, I saw Instagram posts showing a full holiday spread with Diane's parents, her brother and his family, and several friends. My closest friend Jake worked at the same tech company as me. Over lunch one day, I confided in him about my growing concerns. Jake listened carefully, then asked a question that hit home. "Samuel, if they weren't your family, would you consider this a healthy financial relationship?" The question lingered with me for days. The following month, I received a text from Dad asking if I could send the money a few days early because they were in a bit of a bind. I transferred the funds immediately, then checked Isabella's social media out of habit. She had just posted photos from a luxury resort in Cabo San Lucas with the caption, "Surprise birthday trip from the best parents ever." Her birthday wasn't for another 3 months. I tried calling Dad to ask about it, but he didn't pick up. Instead, he texted back, "In meetings all day. Everything okay with the transfer?" When I pressed about the Cabo trip, he eventually responded that it had been a last-minute deal they couldn't pass up and changed the subject. The final straw in this period came when I received a call from my mother. We had maintained a close relationship over the years, and she rarely commented on Dad's family. But this time she sounded concerned. "Samuel, I ran into Diane at the mall yesterday. She was buying a very expensive watch and mentioned it was a gift for your father's business milestone. She implied that you were helping them buy it. Is that true?" It wasn't true. I hadn't been told about any business milestone or watch. But more disturbing was the realization that they were openly discussing my financial support with others, even my mother, while hiding their spending habits from me. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened my banking app and calculated the total amount I had given them over the past years. The number that appeared on my screen made me feel physically ill. $153,000. And that didn't include the additional money I'd provided for emergencies and special occasions. Jake's question echoed in my mind. Was this a healthy relationship? The evidence was mounting that it was not. I was being taken advantage of, my generosity exploited by the very people who should have cared about my well-being. But despite all the red flags, I still wasn't ready to cut them off. They were, after all, my family. Or at least, I desperately wanted them to be. The real breaking point came last spring, as Dad's 55th birthday approached. I wanted to do something special to bring us closer together, to mend whatever was broken in our relationship. After much thought, I decided to plan a family vacation to Hawaii, a place Dad had always talked about visiting but never had. I spent weeks researching resorts on the Big Island, finding activities everyone would enjoy, and checking availability. One evening, I called Dad to propose the idea. To my surprise and delight, he sounded genuinely excited. We discussed potential dates and settled on a week in May. Dad said he'd talked to Diane and Isabella about taking time off work and school. The next day, he confirmed everyone was on board and eager for the trip. Over the next month, I threw myself into planning the perfect vacation. I spent hours comparing resorts before selecting the Royal Kona, a beautiful oceanfront property with excellent reviews. I researched the best luau's, volcano tours, and snorkeling spots. I even found a highly rated private fishing charter, remembering how Dad and I used to fish together when I was young. 2 months before the trip, I put down a $3,000 deposit to secure our ocean view rooms. I sent the confirmation to our family group chat, along with a digital brochure of the resort. Isabella responded with multiple exclamation points and heart emojis. Dad called to thank me, saying it was exactly what the family needed. Even Diane sent a text expressing her excitement. As the trip drew closer, Isabella started texting me more frequently, asking questions about the resort amenities and what activities I'd planned. She seemed particularly interested in whether the rooms had been booked and paid for, and if I'd arranged for rental cars. Each time I confirmed these details, she responded with enthusiasm. 2 weeks before our scheduled departure, I was at the office working late. During a short break, I opened Instagram and began absent-mindedly scrolling. I froze when a photo appeared on my screen. Isabella posing on a black sand beach, cocktail in hand, with the caption, "Surprise family vacation." My stomach dropped. I quickly tapped on her profile and saw more photos posted over the previous 3 days. Dad and Diane lounging by a pool, the three of them at a luau, shots of a hotel room with an ocean view. With a growing sense of dread, I recognized the distinctive architecture and landscaping of the Royal Kona Resort, the exact place I had researched and planned to take them. I immediately tried calling Dad. No answer. I called Isabella. Straight to voicemail. I sent messages to both of them asking what was going on. Nothing. I even tried Diane, something I rarely did, but received no response. For the next several days, I watched in disbelief as more vacation photos appeared on their social media accounts. They were doing everything I had planned. The exact luau I had bookmarked, the volcano tour I had researched, even the private fishing charter I had inquired about. It was as if they had accessed my browser history and followed it like an itinerary. After a week of being ignored, I finally received a text from Isabella. "Hey Sam, having an amazing time in Hawaii. Dad thought we needed some family bonding time before your trip. Can't wait to come back with you next month. The Royal Kona is amazing." I sat staring at my phone, trying to process what I was reading. They had taken the exact vacation I had planned, to the exact resort I had researched, doing the exact activities I had selected, all while keeping me completely in the dark. And now Isabella was pretending this was some kind of pre-trip before our real vacation together. I called again, and this time Dad answered. His voice had the artificial cheerfulness people use when they know they've been caught doing something wrong. "Samuel, we were just talking about you. The resort you picked is fantastic." "Dad," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "why didn't you tell me you were going to Hawaii? We were supposed to go together in 2 weeks. There was a pause before he answered. "Well, son, we got an incredible last-minute deal we couldn't pass up, and Diane's sister decided to join us with her family, so it became a bit of a different trip. We figured we'd still go with you as planned. You can show us all the things we missed this time around." The explanation made no sense. They were staying at the exact resort I had researched. They were doing all the activities I had planned. And Diane's sister? I could see from the photos that there was no extended family with them. It was just the three of them, enjoying the vacation I had meticulously planned, without me. "Dad, I can see from Isabella's Instagram that you're doing everything I planned for our trip. You're even staying at the Royal Kona, which isn't cheap and definitely doesn't offer last-minute deals during peak season." Another pause. "Samuel, I think you're overreacting. We're just having a little family vacation. We can talk about this when we get back." Family vacation. The words echoed painfully. Family without me. Later that evening, I received a longer text from Isabella. "Sam, I don't understand why you're so upset. We needed some private family time. Mom, Dad, and I rarely get to travel just the three of us. We're still looking forward to going with you next month. It'll be fun to show you all our favorite spots. Private family time. Mom, Dad, and I." The message couldn't have been clearer if they had written it out explicitly. I was not considered part of their real family. The next day, I called the resort and canceled our upcoming reservation. The deposit was non-refundable, but I didn't care anymore. When the hotel clerk asked for a reason for the cancellation, I found myself unable to explain. How could I say that my own family had already taken the vacation without me? That they had effectively stolen my carefully researched plans and excluded me from them? The words stuck in my throat, and I simply said, "Change of plans." That night, I sat alone in my condo, surrounded by the printouts of Hawaii activities I had collected, the notes I had made about Dad's favorite foods and interests so I could plan accordingly. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully accept what had been true all along. I was not a son or a brother to them. I was a financial resource, an ATM with a convenient family connection that could be exploited but not included. As this realization settled in, I made a decision. I would not confront them immediately. I would not give them a chance to manufacture more excuses or guilt me into continuing financial support. Instead, I would quietly begin the process of extracting myself from their lives, starting with the money. But I wasn't quite ready to tell them that yet. After discovering the Hawaii betrayal, I spiraled into a deep depression. The office noticed my change in demeanor. My productivity dropped, and I began calling in sick more frequently. My team leader, Ethan, pulled me aside after a particularly disastrous meeting where I had been completely unprepared. "Samuel, what's going on? This isn't like you at all." I brushed him off with vague excuses about not sleeping well. But the truth was I spent most nights staring at the ceiling, replaying years of interactions with my father and Isabella, seeing them in a new, harsh light. Every memory was tainted by the question, had they ever truly cared about me, or was I always just a financial safety net? After 2 weeks of this, I finally admitted I needed help. I found Dr. Martin, a therapist specializing in family trauma, and scheduled an appointment. Walking into his office felt like admitting defeat, but I was desperate for perspective. Dr. Martin listened intently as I poured out 7 years of financial support, emotional manipulation, and the final betrayal of the Hawaii trip. When I finished, I expected him to offer some magical insight that would make it all better. Instead, he asked a simple question. "Samuel, what would you tell a friend who came to you with this exact story?" The answer came immediately. I'd tell them they were being used and needed to cut off contact. "And why is it different when it's you?" he pressed. I didn't have a good answer. Dr. Martin suggested that my ongoing financial support was an attempt to buy the family connection I'd been denied as a child. He introduced me to concepts like emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Most importantly, he talked about boundaries, something completely absent in my relationship with Dad and Isabella. "Healthy relationships are reciprocal," he explained. "Both parties give and receive. From what you've described, you're doing all the giving, and they're doing all the taking." Over the next few sessions, Dr. Martin helped me see how my childhood abandonment had created a desperate need for validation from the very people who had hurt me. My financial success had given me the means to try buying their love and approval, something they were happy to accept without reciprocating. Outside of therapy, I decided to visit my mother. We had always remained close, but I had never fully confided in her about the extent of my financial support to Dad's family. I was afraid she might feel betrayed or hurt that I was helping the man who had left us for another woman. Mom lived in a modest house in Tacoma, working as a librarian. When I arrived, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "What's wrong, Samuel?" Sitting at her kitchen table, the same one from my childhood, I told her everything. The monthly payments, the manipulation, the Hawaii trip. To my surprise, she wasn't shocked. "I've suspected something like this for years," she admitted. "Whenever I ran into Diane at the grocery store or mall, she was always buying expensive things. I knew Richard's business wasn't doing that well. Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. Mom sighed. "You're an adult, Samuel. I didn't want to interfere, and honestly, I hoped I was wrong. I wanted to believe your father wouldn't take advantage of you like that." She reached across the table and took my hand. "But you need to know something. Your worth isn't determined by how much you can provide for others. Your father's treatment of you reflects his character, not yours." Her words hit me hard. For years, I had tied my value to being needed by my father and sister. The monthly transfers weren't just financial transactions. They were proof that I mattered to them, that I had a place in their lives. Without that, who was I to them? Who was I to myself? That night, I couldn't sleep again, but for different reasons. I pulled out my laptop and created a spreadsheet of every payment I had made to Dad and Isabella over the past 7 years. The mortgage payments, Isabella's tuition and living expenses, the extra emergency funds, birthday and Christmas gifts, the Hawaii deposit. The final tally made me nauseous. $176,432. Nearly $200,000. I could have bought a house. I could have funded multiple startups. I could have taken a year off to travel the world. Instead, I had poured it into a relationship that gave me nothing but pain in return. The next morning, I called Jake and asked if he could connect me with a good financial advisor. As my closest friend and someone who worked in the banking industry, I trusted his judgment. He recommended Harold Winters, a financial advisor with experience in complex family situations. Harold reviewed my finances with a professional detachment that was exactly what I needed. He confirmed what I already knew. I had no legal obligation to continue supporting my father or adult sister. The payments had been gifts, not loans, with no formal agreements in place. If you decide to stop the payments, Harold advised, I recommend doing it cleanly. No partial payments or promises to resume in the future. That only creates confusion and false expectations. What about Isabella's tuition? I asked. I don't want to ruin her education. Harold's expression softened slightly. That's commendable, but remember that most students find ways to finance their education. Scholarships, loans, work-study programs. Your sister has options that don't involve you. I left Harold's office with a clear financial plan but still torn emotionally. That evening, I called Dr. Martin and scheduled an emergency session. I needed to work through my decision before I could act on it. In his office, I explained my dilemma. I know I should stop the payments, but I'm afraid of what it means. Once I do this, I'm essentially cutting off my relationship with my only siblings and my father. Are you, though? Dr. Martin asked. Or are they the ones who have already cut off the real relationship, leaving only a financial transaction? He had me describe what a healthy relationship with my father and sister would look like. As I spoke about mutual respect, genuine interest in each other's lives, emotional support, and shared experiences, not just ones they could post on social media, I realized how far the reality diverged from this ideal. The relationship you want doesn't exist right now, Dr. Martin said gently, and continuing to pay won't create it. In fact, it's preventing a real relationship from forming by maintaining this unhealthy dynamic. By the end of the session, my path was clear. I would stop all financial support immediately. I would be prepared for the backlash, the guilt trips, and the potential end of any relationship with Dad and Isabella. It wouldn't be easy, but continuing as things were would only cause more damage. To them by enabling their financial dependence, and to me by reinforcing the belief that I was only valuable for my money. Before leaving, I asked Dr. Martin one final question. Should I tell them before I stop the payments, or just do it? He thought for a moment. Given the pattern of manipulation you've described, I would suggest making the decision and implementing it first. Then inform them, clearly and calmly, without room for negotiation. Otherwise, they'll likely try to talk you out of it. That night, I logged into my banking app and canceled all recurring transfers to Dad and Isabella. I removed Dad as an authorized user on my emergency credit card. I called Columbia University's financial office and informed them I would no longer be paying Isabella's tuition. With each action, I expected to feel guilty or anxious. Instead, I felt something unexpected, relief. It was as if I had been carrying a boulder on my shoulders for 7 years and had finally set it down. I slept soundly that night for the first time in weeks. I decided not to tell them immediately. Dad and Isabella were still in Hawaii, posting daily about their wonderful family vacation. I would wait until they returned, giving myself time to prepare emotionally for the confrontation to come. What I didn't expect was that they would make the first move in the most dismissive way possible. 3 weeks passed without a word from Dad or Isabella. Their Hawaii photos gradually stopped appearing on social media, indicating they had returned home. Still, they didn't call or text. No thank you for the Hawaii deposit I had lost. No mention of our now canceled family trip. Nothing. I spent those weeks rebuilding my life without them. I threw myself into work, making up for my recent productivity slump with new ideas and solutions. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, joined a local hiking group, and started volunteering at a coding boot camp for underprivileged youth. Each day without the weight of my toxic family relationship felt lighter than the last. Then came that Thursday morning. I was at my desk, coffee in hand, preparing for a meeting when my phone buzzed, a notification from our family group chat, which had been silent for nearly a month. I opened it, curious what would finally break the silence. Dad's message was brief and brutal. "You're out. We don't need you." Before I could process this, another message appeared from Isabella. Finally, I stared at my phone, struggling to understand. They were cutting me off? After taking my money for years, after enjoying a vacation I had planned and partially funded, they were telling me I was out? My hands shook as I typed my response. "Good timing. I just canceled your payments." I set my phone down and tried to focus on my computer screen, but the words blurred together. What had prompted this? Had they discovered the canceled payments already? Or was this just the final step in discarding me now that they had extracted what they wanted? At precisely 9:40 in the morning, my phone exploded with notifications. The family chat was suddenly flooded with messages. Dad was first. "What do you mean you canceled the payments? You can't do that. We have an arrangement. Call me immediately." Then Isabella, "Are you serious right now? My tuition payment is due next week. What am I supposed to do about school? This is so irresponsible, Sam. You can't just pull the rug out from under us like this." Even Diane, who rarely communicated with me directly, joined in. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Your father is furious. Isabella is in tears. You need to fix this now." Message after message poured in, a mixture of demands, guilt trips, and outright threats. By the time I looked up from my phone, 35 new messages had appeared in the chat, each more desperate or angry than the last. My phone started ringing, Dad calling. I declined. He called again immediately. I declined again. Then Isabella called, then Diane, then Dad again. I silenced my phone and set it face down on my desk, trying to steady my breathing. Ethan noticed something was wrong and approached my desk. "Samuel, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I managed a weak smile. Family drama. Nothing I can't handle. But my voice must have betrayed me, because Ethan frowned with concern. "Take a few minutes if you need it. The Henderson meeting isn't for another hour." I nodded gratefully and walked to the break room, which was empty at this hour. My phone continued to vibrate in my pocket. When I finally looked at it, I had 7 missed calls and 4 voicemails. I steeled myself and listened to the first one. Dad's voice was tightly controlled but trembling with rage. "Samuel, what the hell do you think you're doing? We had an agreement. Your sister's education is at stake here. Call me back immediately." The second was from Isabella, crying, "Sam, please, you can't do this to me. I have finals coming up, and if my tuition isn't paid, they won't let me take the tests. I'll lose the whole semester. Please call me back." The third was Dad again, no longer controlling his anger. "This is completely unacceptable. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By trying to ruin your sister's future? Call me back right now, or I swear I'll..." The message cut off. The fourth was Diane, her voice coldly furious. "Samuel, your behavior is disgraceful. Your father has done everything for you, and this is how you show your gratitude. Fix this mess you've created, or don't bother considering yourself part of this family anymore." I deleted all 4 messages and turned my phone off completely. The irony of Diane's threat wasn't lost on me. Don't consider yourself part of this family anymore. When had they ever truly included me? Back at my desk, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept returning to the messages. The sheer entitlement they displayed was staggering. After everything we've done for you, what exactly had they done for me? Taken my money? Excluded me from family gatherings? Gone on the vacation I had planned without me? By lunchtime, I had calmed down enough to turn my phone back on. The flood of notifications was overwhelming. 15 more missed calls, 10 voicemails, and dozens of text messages. I ignored them all and called my mother instead. They finally noticed the payment stopped. I told her after explaining what had happened. Mom sighed heavily. "I was afraid it would come to this. Are you okay?" Surprisingly, yes, I realized. I expected to feel guilty or conflicted, but honestly, their reaction just confirms I made the right decision. "What will you do now?" she asked. Nothing, I said firmly. I'm done chasing their approval. I'm done being their ATM. If they want a relationship with me that isn't based on money, they know where to find me. That evening, I went to Jake's apartment for dinner and moral support. We ordered pizza, and I showed him some of the messages, which had continued throughout the day. Jake shook his head in disbelief. Man, they're not even trying to hide it anymore, are they? It's all about the money. The crazy thing is, I said, they started this. You're out. We don't need you. Those were their words, not mine. It's like they were trying to hurt me one last time before I discovered the payments had stopped. Or, Jake suggested, maybe something else happened, and they decided to cut you off before you could cut them off. Either way, good riddance. Later that night, alone in my condo, I finally composed a single message to the family chat. I've supported this family financially for 7 years. In that time, you've excluded me from gatherings, taken advantage of my generosity, and most recently, gone on a vacation I planned and partially paid for without even telling me. I didn't make this decision lightly or suddenly. The Hawaii trip was the final straw. I will not be resuming payments. I will not be manipulated by guilt or threats. If you ever want a relationship with me that isn't based on my financial support, I'm open to that conversation. Otherwise, please respect my decision and my boundaries. I sent the message, then immediately blocked all 3 of them on my phone. Whatever response they might have, I didn't need to see it right now. For the first time in years, I was taking back control of my life and my relationships. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized something important. Family isn't just about blood relation, it's about mutual respect, support, and love. By those measures, I had been without a real family for a very long time. Maybe now I could start building genuine connections based on something other than financial obligation. Little did I know, the fallout was just beginning. Their reaction to being cut off financially would prove just how right I had been all along. The day after my message to the family chat, I received an unexpected call from an unfamiliar number. It turned out to be from Jackson, a banker at my local branch who had helped me set up some of my accounts years ago. Mr. Daniels, I apologize for calling out of the blue, but we have a situation I thought you should know about. A man identifying himself as your father attempted to withdraw a significant sum from your joint savings account this morning. My heart skipped. I don't have a joint account with my father. There was an awkward pause. That's what our records show as well, sir. He presented identification and claimed the account was jointly held, but when our teller verified, she found he had no access. He became quite insistent. Insistent how? I asked, though I could guess. He raised his voice considerably and demanded to speak with a manager. When the manager confirmed he had no access to the account, he claimed there must be a mistake, that he'd been accessing the account for years. He finally left when security approached. I thanked Jackson for the information and hung up, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. Dad had never had access to my accounts. The only financial connection we had was the monthly transfers I initiated. Had he somehow expected to be able to withdraw money directly from my account? Or was this a desperate move after finding himself suddenly cut off? The answer came later that afternoon when Jake called me. Samuel, you're not going to believe this. Your father just left the bank, and you need to hear what happened. Jake worked at the main branch downtown, not my local branch where the earlier incident had occurred. He tried to apply for a credit card in your name, Jake continued, his voice low as if worried about being overheard. Said he was authorized to manage your finances. When the account manager asked for documentation, he couldn't provide any. Then he tried to guilt her, saying it was for his daughter's education and medical expenses. My blood ran cold. That's identity theft, Jake. Exactly. When the manager threatened to call security, he backed down and left. Samuel, I shouldn't even be telling you this, but you need to know, they've flagged his information in the system now. If he tries anything like this at any branch, they'll contact the authorities. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to process this new level of betrayal. Not content with guilt-tripping me into resuming payments, Dad had actually attempted to access my accounts directly and then tried to open credit in my name. It was more than manipulation. It was criminal. That evening, my building's security desk called up. "Mr. Daniels, there's a young woman here insisting on seeing you. Says she's your sister. Should we send her up?" "Isabella." I hesitated, then agreed. Whatever she had to say, better to hear it directly than have her make a scene in the lobby. When I opened my door, I barely recognized her. The confident, carefree girl from the Hawaii Instagram posts was gone. Instead, Isabella looked disheveled and anxious, her eyes red from crying. "Sam, please," she said as soon as I opened the door. "You have to help me. They're going to kick me out of school if the tuition isn't paid by Monday." I stepped aside to let her in, but maintained my distance. "Isabella, we need to talk about more than just your tuition." She paced my living room, running her hands through her hair. "Look, I know you're upset about something, but this is my education we're talking about. My future. You can't just cut me off without warning." "Without warning?" I repeated incredulously. "What about, 'You're out, we don't need you'? What about 'finally'? Those were your words, Isabella." She froze, then her expression changed subtly. That was about something else. Dad and I were talking about a family situation that didn't involve you. In our family group chat, the only purpose of which was to coordinate with me about financial matters. I shook my head. "Please don't lie to me. Not anymore." Isabella's face crumpled, and she collapsed onto my couch, sobbing. I waited, not offering comfort but not asking her to leave either. "Fine," she finally said, wiping her eyes. "We knew you were upset about Hawaii. Dad said you were probably going to stop the payments, so we needed to hurt you first. Make it look like our idea, not yours." The casual cruelty of it stunned me. "So you thought the best approach was to send me those messages, after I've supported you for years?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It was Dad's idea. He said your ego couldn't handle being rejected, so we needed to make you think we didn't want your money anymore. And you went along with it." She shrugged helplessly. "You don't understand what it's like with him. When Dad gets an idea, you either go along with it or suffer the consequences." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered all the Instagram posts, all the luxuries she'd enjoyed while I worked 60-hour weeks. "Isabella, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Are you actually attending Columbia right now?" Her eyes widened, then she looked away. I'm taking a break." "A break," I repeated flatly. "Since when?" "Since last semester," she admitted in a small voice. "I failed some classes and was put on academic probation. Then I just didn't go back. So for the past 6 months, the tuition money I've been sending, Dad said I deserved a gap year," she whispered, "to find myself." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those months of transfers for a tuition that wasn't being paid, all those messages about classes and finals that weren't happening. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "Sam, please," she begged. "I know it looks bad, but I really do need your help. Dad's been impossible since you cut us off. He's drinking again, yelling at everyone. He even threatened to kick me out if I didn't convince you to start the payments again." I almost wavered, my instinct to protect her still strong despite everything. But then, I remembered Dr. Martin's words about enabling harmful behavior. "Isabella, I care about you. You're my sister. But I can't keep supporting this toxic dynamic. You're 22 years old. You have options that don't involve me or Dad." "Like what?" she snapped, suddenly angry. "Get a job? Live in some crappy apartment with roommates? You have no idea how hard that would be for me." And there it was, the entitlement that had been cultivated over years of having everything handed to her. She wasn't concerned about her education. She was concerned about maintaining her lifestyle. "I think that's exactly what you should do," I said firmly. "Get a job. Learn to support yourself. Discover who you are outside of Dad's influence and my financial support." "So that's it? You're just cutting me off? What kind of brother does that?" Her eyes narrowed. "You know what Dad always said about you? That you only helped us because you felt guilty. That deep down, you knew you weren't really part of our family, so you tried to buy your way in." The words stung, but not as much as they once would have. Maybe there was some truth to that. But not anymore. I'm done trying to buy a place in a family that doesn't want me. She left in tears, slamming my door hard enough to make the pictures on the wall rattle. I leaned against the wall, emotionally drained but also strangely calm. The truth was finally out in the open, ugly as it was. The next confrontation came 2 days later. I was at the office when Ethan appeared at my desk looking uncomfortable. "Samuel, there's someone asking for you in reception. Says he's your father. He seems agitated." I closed my eyes briefly. "I'll handle it." "Thanks, Ethan." In the reception area, Dad was pacing back and forth, his face flushed with anger. When he saw me, he immediately started toward me, voice raised. "There you are. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your sister is devastated. We could lose the house." The receptionist looked alarmed, and I gestured for Dad to follow me to a small meeting room nearby. As soon as the door closed behind us, he rounded on me. "You had no right to cut us off like that. After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. "In the past 7 years, what have you given me besides demands for more money?" "I raised you," he shouted. "I put a roof over your head. I'm your father." "You left when I was 10, I reminded him. "Mom raised me, and for the past 7 years, I've been putting a roof over your head." His face darkened. "So that's what this is about? You think because you've helped us out financially, you own us? We're just supposed to dance to your tune?" The irony was staggering. "No, Dad, that's not what this is about at all. This is about respect. This is about honesty. This is about family being more than a financial arrangement. We need that money, Samuel. Isabella needs that money." "Isabella hasn't been in school for 6 months, I said, watching his expression carefully. "She told me everything." He faltered for just a moment, then rallied. "She's going back next semester. She just needed a break. The pressure was too much." "The pressure of what? Spending my money on vacations and designer clothes?" Dad's expression changed, becoming calculating. "You know, I could make things very difficult for you. I know things about your company, about your personal life." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, incredulous. "I'm stating facts. You've put yourself in a position of responsibility for this family. You can't just walk away from that without consequences." I studied the man before me, trying to reconcile him with the father I remembered from childhood. There was nothing left of that person in the angry, manipulative man threatening me in my workplace. "Dad, I think you should leave before you say something you can't take back." "This isn't over," he warned as he stalked toward the door. "You'll regret turning your back on your family." As he left, Ethan approached cautiously. "Everything okay?" "No," I admitted. "But it will be." Later that day, Jake called with more disturbing news. "Samuel, I heard from a colleague at the credit department. Someone tried to access your credit report multiple times yesterday. They had your social security number but failed the identity verification questions. It was clear what was happening. Dad was desperately trying to find ways to access money now that I'd cut him off. The fact that he would resort to potential identity theft shocked even me. That evening I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Is this Samuel Daniels?" a man's voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Peter Gordon. I'm a floor manager at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. I'm calling about Richard Daniels. You're listed as his emergency contact." My stomach dropped. What happened? Mr. Daniels was asked to leave the premises after being unable to cover his casino markers. He became agitated. Mentioned that his son would cover the debt. When we explained that wasn't possible, he caused a scene. Security had to escort him out. I closed my eyes. How much does he owe? $23,000. The amount was shocking, but somehow not surprising. Dad had a gambling problem years ago, before the divorce. It seemed it had returned with a vengeance. "I'm sorry, but I won't be covering that debt," I said firmly. "We understand, sir. This isn't your responsibility. I'm only calling because he refused to leave the property until we contacted you. He's been barred from the premises for 6 months. After hanging up, I sat in my darkened living room, processing this new information. Dad's desperate attempts to access money weren't just about maintaining his lifestyle or Isabella's education. He had gambling debts, possibly substantial ones, given his increasingly desperate measures. Over the next few days, I received calls from various family members. Some, like Aunt Patricia, were sympathetic once they heard my side of the story. Others, particularly on Diane's side, were hostile, accusing me of abandoning my family in their time of need. I explained the situation calmly to each of them, neither defending myself aggressively nor backing down. A week after Dad's visit to my office, I received a certified letter from a lawyer named Marcus Johnston. It stated formally that any further attempts by Richard Daniels or Isabella Daniels to contact me at my workplace would result in legal action for harassment. My company's legal team had taken steps to protect me after Dad's outburst in reception. At Dr. Martin's suggestion, I hired my own attorney, who sent formal cease and desist letters to both Dad and Isabella, documenting the attempts to access my accounts and the threats made at my workplace. It felt extreme, but necessary to establish clear boundaries. 2 weeks later, Isabella texted from a new number, "Can we meet? Just to talk. No money stuff. Please." Against my better judgment, and despite my lawyer's advice, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Isabella arrived 10 minutes late, looking more put together than during her visit to my apartment, but still subdued. She ordered a coffee and sat across from me, fidgeting with her napkin. "I got a job," she said without preamble, "at Nordstrom. Just sales associate, but the employee discount is good." "That's great," I said, genuinely pleased. "How do you like it?" "It's harder than I expected," she admitted. "Being on your feet all day, dealing with rude customers. But it's okay. The other girls are nice." We talked awkwardly for a few minutes about her job, my work, the unusually warm weather. Finally, she got to the point. "Sam, I'm sorry. For everything. For Hawaii, for the messages, for coming to your apartment and saying those things. Dad was. Dad was manipulating me too, you know? I just couldn't see it until recently. I wanted to believe her. Part of me desperately wanted to repair this relationship, to have a sister I could trust and care about. But the wounds were still too fresh." "What changed?" I asked. She looked down. "After you cut us off, things got bad at home. Dad started drinking heavily, gambling again. He lost his job 2 weeks ago. He told Diane it was because the company was downsizing, but I overheard him on the phone. He was fired for showing up drunk." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. "Diane kicked him out 3 days ago. Said she was done with his lies." Isabella wiped away a tear. "She told me I could stay through the end of the month, but then I need to find my own place." "Where's Dad now?" "Staying with his cousin in Tacoma. He's not doing well." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me felt responsible, but a larger part recognized that Dad's choices were his own. I hadn't caused his gambling or drinking problems. "Isabella, I want to be clear about something. I care about you. You're my sister. But I can't go back to the financial arrangement we had before. It wasn't healthy for any of us." "I know," she said quietly. "I'm not asking for money. I don't want to lose my brother completely." For the first time, I saw a glimmer of genuine emotion from her, not calculated to manipulate me or extract something. It was a small step, but perhaps a meaningful one. "I'd like that too," I said cautiously. "But we'd need to rebuild trust, slowly, and with clear boundaries." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'd like to try." As I walked back to my office after our meeting, I felt lighter somehow. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, and might never be completely, but because I had stayed true to my boundaries, while keeping the door open just a crack for a healthier relationship in the future. Over the following months, I refocused my energy and resources. With the money no longer going to Dad and Isabella, I established a scholarship fund for first-generation college students without family support. It felt healing to transform the painful experience into something positive. I also reconnected with old friends, joined social groups, and even started dating again after years of focusing primarily on work and supporting my family. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself, not to fill an emotional void or buy approval. Isabella and I maintained cautious contact. We met for coffee every few weeks, gradually rebuilding something that felt more like a real sibling relationship than what we'd had before. She continued working at Nordstrom, moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates, and even enrolled in community college classes. Dad was a different story. After several failed attempts to contact me for money, he finally sent a brief email acknowledging he had made mistakes and would work on himself. I responded politely but maintained firm boundaries. If he wanted a relationship, it would be on new terms, not the old dynamic. 6 months after cutting off financial support, I received an unexpected email from Diane. She was divorcing Dad and wanted to apologize for her role in the family dynamic that had hurt me. Her words seemed sincere, and I appreciated the gesture, though I had no interest in maintaining contact with her. The most profound change, however, was within myself. I no longer defined my worth by what I could provide for others or whether my family wanted me. I had built a life of meaning and connection on my own terms, with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. The journey wasn't easy, and there were still difficult days when old insecurities surfaced. But each time I maintained my boundaries, each time I chose self-respect over the desperate need for approval, I grew stronger. The broken child seeking his father's love was finally healing, making way for the confident man I was becoming. It's been a full year since that morning when I received those 3 messages that changed everything. You're out. We don't need you. Finally, good timing, I just canceled your payments. Words that once cut deep now remind me of how far I've come. The first few months after cutting financial ties with my father and Isabella were the hardest. I would wake up in the middle of the night, second-guessing my decision, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too absolute. Dr. Martin helped me recognize these moments as the residual programming of years of emotional manipulation. Each time those thoughts surfaced, I would remind myself of the Hawaii trip, the lies about Isabella's education, and Dad's attempts to access my accounts. The doubt would recede, replaced by the certainty that I had made the right choice. Building a life without the constant drain of toxic family relationships has been remarkably freeing. I've developed genuine friendships that don't revolve around what I can provide. Jake and I still meet weekly for dinner or basketball. Ethan and I have become close friends outside of work, and he's introduced me to his circle of friends who have welcomed me warmly. Dr. Martin eventually transitioned from being my therapist to being a mentor, helping me navigate the ongoing process of healing. My relationship with Mom has deepened in ways I never expected. For years, I kept her at arm's length regarding Dad's family, afraid of hurting her feelings. Now we talk openly about everything. She's remarried to a kind, steady man named George, and seeing her happy in a healthy relationship has been healing for both of us. The scholarship fund I established has been my greatest joy. This year, we provided full tuition for 5 students who, like me, came from broken homes or lacked family support. Meeting these brilliant, determined young people, and knowing they won't have to struggle quite as much as I did, has given purpose to my pain. One of the recipients, a young woman named Layla, reminds me of myself at that age, serious, driven, and carrying too much on her shoulders. Watching her flourish with proper support has been incredibly rewarding. My career has taken an exciting turn as well. Without the financial burden of supporting my father's family, I was able to take a risk and join a promising startup developing accessibility software for people with disabilities. The work is challenging and meaningful in ways my previous job never was. For the first time, I'm not just working for a paycheck. I'm creating something that genuinely improves lives. As for my family, things have evolved in unexpected ways. Isabella and I maintain a careful relationship. After moving out of Diane's house, she struggled initially but has shown remarkable resilience. She completed her first year at community college with good grades and transferred to a state university where she's studying business administration. We meet for lunch once a month, and while we don't discuss the past often, there's an unspoken understanding between us. She's never asked for money again, and I've seen genuine growth in her character. Dad's story has been more complicated. After Diane divorced him, he spiraled further into gambling and drinking before finally hitting rock bottom. 3 months ago, he entered a rehabilitation program. 2 weeks into his treatment, I received a handwritten letter from him, not asking for money or forgiveness, but acknowledging the harm he had caused and expressing a commitment to change. I responded with a brief note wishing him well in his recovery. It was neither a reconciliation nor a rejection, just an acknowledgement that we both needed to heal in our own ways. Last week, I received an email that took me by surprise. Isabella had forwarded a message from Dad's counselor at the rehabilitation center. Dad had listed me as someone he had harmed and wished to make amends to as part of his recovery program. The counselor asked if I would be willing to participate in a family therapy session. I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants closure. Another part fears being pulled back into old patterns. Dr. Martin advised me to trust my instincts and remember that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean resuming a relationship. Through all of this, I've learned lessons that have fundamentally changed how I view myself and my relationships. The most profound realization has been that my value as a person never depended on what I could provide for others. For years, I measured my worth by how much my family needed me, conflating financial support with love. Breaking that pattern has allowed me to develop authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency. I've also learned that establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. Every time I maintained my boundaries despite guilt trips and manipulation, I grew stronger. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries, even when they're disappointed. Perhaps most importantly, I've discovered that family is defined by actions, not blood. The people who have stood by me this past year, Jake, Ethan, Mom, the students in my scholarship program, have shown more genuine care and support than my biological family ever did. They've taught me that family can be chosen, built on foundations of respect and reciprocity rather than obligation. The pain hasn't disappeared completely. There are still moments when I feel the ache of what might have been if my father had been capable of loving me for who I am rather than what I could provide. But that pain no longer defines me or drives my decisions. It's simply part of my story, a chapter that shaped me but doesn't determine my future. If my experience offers any wisdom to others in similar situations, it's this: you can't buy love or belonging, and any relationship that requires you to sacrifice your self-respect isn't worth the price. Real love builds you up. It doesn't drain you dry. And sometimes the hardest decision, walking away from toxic family relationships, is ultimately the most healing. Today, I'm building my own definition of family, with people who value me for exactly who I am. It's not perfect, and it's certainly not what I imagined my life would look like, but it's authentic and nourishing in ways my previous family relationships never were. The journey continues, with its ups and downs, but I move forward with a confidence I never had before. No longer defined by rejection or acceptance from others, I've finally found the approval I was always seeking, my own. Has anyone else had to make difficult decisions about family relationships for your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. And remember, sharing these stories might help someone who's struggling with similar family dynamics right now. Thank you for listening, and I hope my journey has offered some comfort or clarity for your own. Take care of yourselves, and remember that you deserve relationships that honor your worth.